The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the PLM for All, Unleashing Product Data to the Enterprise webcast, presented by Peter Bolello, President of CIMdata, and Chris Bergquist, PLM Solution Director at PTC. My name is Nicole Avedikian, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. I'll also be recording the webcast for replay purposes. If at any point you're experiencing technical difficulties, please click the hand button with the arrow located on the tab to the left of your control panel. If your control panel is not open, click on the orange button with the arrow. You can submit questions at any time during the webinar by typing your question and pressing send in the question box located on the bottom of the control panel. We'll do the Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you would like to view the presentation at full screen, please click the screen button located on the tab to the left of your control panel. And now I'd like to introduce you to our first presenter, Peter. Peter, you may begin the presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I hope that you are well focused and ready for quite a bit of information to talk about PLM. First, kind of just give a brief introduction about CIMdata, just in case you don't know who CIMdata is. We are a global strategic management consulting and research authority on PLM. We've actually been tracking the market for more than 30 years, almost 34 years. So a lot of the content that I'll be sharing with you at this time will hopefully gain some additional perspective that you have on PLM, what it is and what it can be. But it's sharing of our perspective, a global perspective in our work across 6 continents and with industries of all shapes and sizes to give an understanding where PLM is and what it needs to have, basically what has to change with PLM in order for it to be more successful within implementations. If you have any other questions about CIMdata, anything that we might be able to help you with, please go to our website, CIMdata.com. So in this presentation, I want to give you a base understanding of why what we're doing today in managing the product lifecycle is just not working. For many times we have to many industrial companies have to rethink what the product lifecycle is and how we enable it, because quite frankly, we're not receiving the benefits that are possible or promised. Product-related information is scattered throughout organizations, and this is a good news and a bad news situation. We have a lot of information that's created and used inside engineering for the most part from a PLM perspective, but there's so much other information outside of engineering that engineers need to have, but also other people throughout the organization, the product data stakeholders, as I like to call it, that need to have access to, that exist in many systems. And we're going to talk about that and give you an understanding of why that's so important. Unfortunately, there's this restricted use of data from PLM and these other enterprise systems, which in reality reduces the potential of PLM and how product lifecycle management as a strategic business approach can support an organization. And a lot of times these solutions become very engineering-centric and not enterprise-centric or not product lifecycle-centric as they need to be. And what we're looking for is really solutions that are more role-based. Ones would allow the user in the context of their process, the role and the deliverables that they have to develop and understand and the decisions they have to make can work easily, can access the information no matter where that information is stored and managed, and do that in a way that is easy for the organization and beneficial for the organization, which means the solutions that allow that to happen, that provide that connectivity across processes and data stores, has to be implemented in an easy way and sustainable for the long term. And in order to really optimize the product information across the whole enterprise. So I hope that these are the 4 major takeaways that you'll understand as we talk about really making PLM for all and unleashing the product data to the full enterprise. So CIMdata now is about 34 years old. I've been with the organization for about 18 years. And we've come up with a definition that we've used for product lifecycle management for some years now. And we've talked about it as closed loop integration of people, processes, and information, and then the business systems related to that. And that's actually a definition that we've had for at least 10 years now. And it's around this collaborative creation, management and use and dissemination of product-related intellectual assets. So this is a strategic business approach. And if you look at this definition, it is an extended enterprise definition. It's from concept through life. Many products don't have end of life now. They have continuous life, for example, things for remanufacturing, repurposing, and everything that requires a better look or a better understanding and a more complete understanding of who the product data stakeholders are. This is the definition. This is a definition that many other people share. and that has been used in the market for 10, 15 years now. And that's what we've been trying to accomplish. We've also been looking at it as a full life cycle, right? We start with generally with requirements, moving on to design, conceptual design, into the engineering fields, the simulation analysis, all the way into manufacturing and support, and then ultimately into that re-X's, recycle, repurpose, remanufacture, recover. And you look at the life cycle, and we know that product data expands throughout it. Data is created all along this life cycle. It's used throughout this life cycle. But unfortunately, as we look at major industrial companies and even minor industrial companies throughout the world, so much of PLM is focused still around the product engineering aspect of the life cycle. And we have a lot of disconnects with systems and processes that use, create, manage, disseminate those intellectual assets, that product data that we're talking about. And it's we have a vision, we've had a vision for a long time, but we're still not achieving it. And there's some pretty good reasons for it, which I'll get into in a few minutes. Another way to look at the life cycle, and it's really important, this continuous evolution of information, and you have at the core of the life cycle the product and process definitions, so this product data. And we've been positioning this as a core to the enterprise for quite a number of years. And it's important because people create that information, they use that information, they make decisions on that information, they use it to go build something, to support something. So that information is a life cycle issue. Product data really has never been an engineering issue, or solely an engineering issue. A lot of product data starts before that in defining what's my customer requirements, what's the market telling me, what's my portfolio and my requirements, then driving into product development or the traditional areas that product data management, for example, has been applied. And then moving into the produce and being able to execute upon that information to produce something, to deliver something, product and or service, and then ultimately to support that product and continue to have a digital twin of that product so you can continue to support it and operate it in the most efficient manner possible. So again, product data is at the core of the enterprise and is an enterprise issue and a life cycle issue. Then we look at, okay, well that's great, but then how do companies typically support it? Well, many islands of automation still exist for most of the industrial companies that we see throughout the world in most markets. There are, for every bad example, there might be one a good example, but probably there's for every 10 bad examples, there hopefully is at least one good example. Because most companies still have a fragmented set of data solutions, enterprise and maybe departmental solutions, sometimes desktop solutions. A lot of scattered product data exists both at the core of the business that are all product related, and then a lot of information sources throughout the business. Now, at one time some companies say, well, I want to have this one magic solution that does all this. Well, quite frankly, I think that will be impossible for any one company to ever implement that way for many different reasons, which we get into this point. But it's not practical from a cost perspective, simply because if I'm dealing with dozens, if not hundreds of solutions, there has to be a better way to connect that information, to bring it to the right stakeholder, the right user, in the right role at the right time, and do that in a manner that's effective for your business and also that's effective from an execution perspective, but also a cost perspective. And in the recent years, we've done a number of studies that really have shown the truth that's going on in businesses. Now, this is a value gap analysis that CIMdata did just a few years ago now, and we continue to update this and look at different industries. Now, this one was done in the aerospace and defense industry specifically. And what this is showing is the green line. It's basically what the technology, the PLM technology available at any given time, what its capabilities are, and what is implemented against it. And if you look in the early 90s, the technologies were mainly toolkits that companies would take and build upon. So what they implemented usually had more capabilities than what was delivered. And usually the vision of that solution provider and of the business in general would be always higher than what the technology could provide. And that's always going to be the case. A vision should always lead to technology development. Now what you see here though in this implementation line is that the line is the gap between what is being implemented and the technology available is widening. And the study actually of more than 60 A&D organizations, both major OEMs throughout the world in aerospace and defense and major tier 1 suppliers, is that the followers, as we call it, have a bigger gap than the leaders. And the followers were the vast majority of those that were interviewed and surveyed. and the leaders, there was approximately about 5 leaders that came out of that group of 60. And what made them leaders is what they were able to apply and how they approached PLM more as a strategic business approach, less like a product data management solution or a engineering-only solution. So it's what they implemented, how they envisioned PLM, the strategy that they implemented, the fact that they had more sustainable solutions that could be extended and upgraded as new technologies came out. So that it was really looking at PLM, I think for the most part, in summary, the leaders saw PLM as a strategic business approach. They saw it as a way to connect information and users throughout the organization on that product information, no matter where that data was actually created, and bringing more value as a result to the user community. But it was a small fraction of the 60 or so that we interviewed and surveyed that actually were breaking out of the mode and the mode of really just developing kind of traditional product data management systems, moving into more lifecycle management solutions, which in turn they receive more benefit. More benefit of that information, being able to make better decisions more quickly, higher quality products would result. There's other add-on benefits that come from actually using product data in a wider sense, making sure that it's accessible to all those that need it, close the loops that exist, the open loops that exist in many organizations. So I kind of extend on that, but it's a really important point that it's not just in the A&D industry, but in other similar industries, especially early adopter industries such as automotive, high-tech electronics, and a few others. So we have to think about this industries and how industry approaches it, and as I said, the other industries suggest the same. Another feedback from the field is a recent CIMdata Foresight opinion poll. And in this poll, as it says, we asked people that were surveyed, what do you think your senior management is saying about PLM? How do they view PLM? So almost 27% said it's working and it's important to their business. So that's a very positive. Unfortunately, about 23% said it's just another solution, not delivering to promise. 20% they think that their senior management wouldn't even know what it is. And I would argue if it's strategic to the business, all senior management should know that. Almost 17% said it's a competitive advantage, which is quite positive. But then 13% says it's overhead, it's slowing us down. So if you look at the numbers, about 57% have reported in this survey that they see PLM, they believe their management sees PLM as non-value added. And that's a big problem. I mean, the majority is saying it's not where it needs to be. It's not recognized as that strategic business approach. And there's various reasons for this. As we look at industrial companies and try to understand what are those reasons, one is many companies still don't envision, they don't develop a strategy that looks at PLM as an enterprise solution, a lifecycle solution. They also look at it as maybe one technology and not understanding how PLM really needs to be more of an information platform to connect other information sources together. They don't look at PLM as working within the right roles, or they look at it as maybe just too narrow of a role, just again within the engineering or product development space. Often, even with companies that look at a broader view of PLM, they don't necessarily adjust the culture, or they don't have the right process owners to make the adjustments to take advantage of that product data in a more holistic manner, more end-to-end approach that product lifecycle management should take. And in some ways that the cultural issues and the process issues are related to the first issue. If you don't have a broad enough vision, you may not ever be able to change the culture or get the process owners to work differently. So fundamentally, people are more likely to use the PLM in the right sense if they understand how to use it and it actually fits the roles that they play and they see value in it. And unfortunately, again, the current state of PLM investments is lacking. That a lot of companies fall short on, one, their vision and implementation strategies, and then two, even if they have that, they don't necessarily build out their organization to support it and their processes to enable it basically within their organizations. In our work with industrial companies around the world, we interact with many of them. We see quite a number where there's foundations in place, again, more that product data management, PDM foundation from a product development focus. Some are actually on their second and third generation systems, but generally they're fairly narrow in scope. There's quite a bit of effort and expense that has been generated or actually spent within industrial companies on core capabilities, but not a lot outside the core capabilities of data management within engineering. Most organizations, industrial organizations, though, that we work with and that we talk to do want to broaden and deepen their implementation. They do want to leverage the foundation that they put into place to improve their return on investment. But the maturity of their implementations vary quite a bit. And we see this applicable across many different industry sectors. And fundamentally, it still comes down to, we have to think differently. If we, we're really insane if we think if we continue to implement the same way, think the same strategies, do the same thing with our cultures, and we think that we're going to get improvements, it's not going to happen. And I always like the quote, the definition of insanity in the quote here. If we're not getting done what we need today, which many industries are showing we're not utilizing PLM as we need to, well then why do we think it's going to change? And this quote from Albert Einstein I always think is a really nice one here is, if we do the same, his definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over again expecting different results. And I think we'd all agree with that is, there's only so many times I want to run into a brick wall and think, well, isn't there a better way? Maybe there's a way to go around it, maybe there's a way to remove it, maybe there's a way to go over it, but I really have to change my thinking. I have to think differently about product lifecycle management. I have to operate differently. I have to look for different solutions that allow me to approach the problems that I have and deal with the complexity of product information and the multiple solutions I have in a way that is beneficial to my organization. So, how does a company, what can a company do to break the cycle and to break out of the limited benefits that a less than optimum PLM solution provides? Well, first, the organization really needs to have a more holistic strategy that includes the implementation of PLM that enables the extended enterprise and that looks and understands all the stakeholders. It's not just about the CAD designers or the bill of material development people. There's all kinds of stakeholders throughout the organization that not only need that product information to make decisions, but actually a lot of other people add to it or even create it. As we see in smart connected devices, there's so much information, product-related information that's coming from the field. How do I take advantage of that? It's so much closing the loops from manufacturing back to engineering, or maybe even earlier than that in marketing, and then from the field as well. So, having an end-to-end solution that really closes the data loops that exist through the organization and try to disconnect those disconnected systems that support it. So we need a system where solution approach and an implementation of a solution allows you to close those open lifecycle loops that exist. And I would be shocked if there's an organization that doesn't have disconnects in their product data, especially if they have a product that's in the field and they want to understand what's going on with it. There's so many open loops right now in most organizations that they don't really even realize how much inefficiencies they have in their product information. And then this is such a big requirement for them. And if you look at some of the philosophies that are emerging, like the circular economy. So this is a slide that is one view of the circular economy where products could have multiple loops. Some products may be designed for longevity, others for service, others for manufacture. And there's all these loops of information that are coming around. Part of the product may be designed to be recycled. Part of the product may be designed to be refurbished. Part of the product may be designed to just be cleaned every so many cycles. And so as we look at this gets even more complex. It's not just about end of life, but it's about continuous through life and what we call the re-X's. Again, repurposing, remanufacturing, reusing, recycling. Again, all these loops exist within the organization, so how do we support them? How do we enable these loops of information and make sure that they're closed? Because there's many of them. And I think if you look at your own organization, you'll pretty quickly understand that there's a lot of information around product that exists in other areas of the life cycle than you traditionally have thought about. There's all kinds of spreadsheets, there's all kinds of other systems and enterprise, and sometimes, as I said, departmental systems. Your customers may have systems about your products as well. And unfortunately, a lot of that's not accessible. It's not either in a format maybe that we can use, or it may not be we just can't connect to it. We don't have an understanding that it even exists. And we have to be able to get that information and utilize it or put it in the right context for the right users so that they can use it and make better decisions on that, based on that information. And despite the fact that there has been steady progress made for interoperability and trying to make workflows and processes more transparent, there's still a lot of work that's needed. And part of this is a standards issue. There's lots of standards. That's the good news. The bad news is there's lots of standards. So what other ways can we use to get at that information and kind of minimize the issues around that interoperability that exists has existed for some times. So there's a lot of open loops. There's ones that are going to be created as we continue to create more smart connected products. There'll be more information that is out there that may not be closed, or that loop may not be closed from the field all the way to the different areas of product information that are needed. In some ways, companies are hamstrung and really can't develop and support game-changing ideas and competitive products because they really don't know where they're supposed to improve. They don't understand how companies are really, or customers are really using their products. In many ways, the disconnections undermine collaboration, even among the teams that exist within companies, let alone organizations that are part of that extended enterprise. So closing the loops and eliminating the workflows disconnections really maybe in many ways a never-ending battle. Certainly in the technologies that many people have implemented to date, it's been more difficult because a lot of one-off integrations, a lot of integration technologies that are very difficult and costly to actually implement. So we have to look again for new ways to go support this because these aren't going to go away. Let's say vision of having one super system or one large data lake that has all this, I think it's impossible from a technology perspective, but from an organizational perspective, it's even impossible. So we have to have a way to better collaborate among these systems and have connected solutions that actually provide that end-to-end capabilities that we're looking for. So, and we see this evolving actually. We see the maturing of PLM capabilities to really start closing these loops, and Chris from PTC will talk about their approach to this. And one of these things is what we call, CIMdata calls the platformization of PLM, and has how PLM itself as a strategy and as solutions are becoming information platforms, providing connectivity, capabilities that allow for many data sources to be connected together, for processes to be connected together, providing that connection, not necessarily a superset or one solution that does everything, but a solution that can orchestrate and provide information to the right people in the right context, in the way that they have to work in their role. That's a platformization, that end-to-end connectivity, bringing together multiple solutions to build a platform. And you can look at smartphones and others and start understanding what platforms look like. They're not necessarily from one vendor but have applications from multiple, for example. But it's this ability of the platform to bring information together and bring processes together so that the end user can work how they need to work. So let me give you just a little bit more about this PLM as a product innovation platform and just what are some of the key characteristics. Well, first, that platform, that PLM solution has to be able to connect requirements. It has to be able to allow for people working within that environment to make sure that they're producing information and making decisions based on the requirements so that they can innovate in the product and processes that they're responsible for. The PLM solution, the work environment must be able to align the customer requirements rather than simply being an engineering-centric solution driven by R&D. It has to have an end-to-end view of that information. It must be an enterprise platform, business platform, and it must be used to integrate a whole host of organizational disciplines outside of engineering. Disciplines that include like compliance, sustainability and safety, certainly manufacturing and service, marketing, purchasing, and the list goes on of the product data creators and users throughout an enterprise. And the solution really should have a set of capabilities that are natively supported, like data analytics and visualization, forms of modeling, information modeling, system modeling, closed-loop decision-making. That's why the data has to be brought together in a way and in the context of the user so that they can make better decisions. And then intellectual property management protection, certainly our core capabilities we expect to see built out. And many, like PTC, are already building these out into their solutions and providing these types of platforms. And we expect that to continue in the PLM market in the years to come. A few other things I want to make note of is what are some of the characteristics, other key characteristics that as an industrial company you should look for in a PLM solution and this product innovation platform. Well, it should be maintainable, right? It should be available. It should be upgradable. It should be sustainable in the bigger sense, is scalable, functionally available to people, usable. And so these are a bunch of what we call PLM investment sustainability characteristics. And what I want to do is kind of focus down on a few key ones for this discussion. The first one is adaptable. So the solution that's provided by PTC should be, and they'll describe how they're doing this, should be easy for the organization to configure. Both the solution data model, the user interface, the workflows that are specific and fit the needs of the users and in their roles. It has to be usable, right? It has to be able to operate by the end user to produce their deliverables, again, in their context, in their user role context within the lifecycle, which can change. It has to be compatible, it has to be able to be connected to other appropriate enterprise and desktop solutions without using a bunch of special software to go do that. That can be time-consuming and costly. It has to be maintainable. You have to be able to utilize it and evolve the solution over time as appropriate to continue to fit the business needs of the organization. And it has to be upgradable. So as new capabilities come out, the company has to be able to move up to the next level of capabilities and continue to close the gap between what's implemented and what the technology can provide. Now these are all the 17 or so capabilities I showed on the previous slide are important, but I wanted to focus down on these 5 because we find that these are, let's say, even more critical than the others. So as an industry example, is here PTC, and Chris will talk about PTC Navigate. CIMdata had an opportunity to kind of understand what PTC is doing with this new solution. It's a role-based solution that is meant to bring information together from multiple sources and do that in the context of the role that the person is playing. It's a set of apps as well, and I'm sure Chris will go into detail on that. And as we see it, it's designed to deliver this data connectivity, this product data connectivity and access that's really critical for enterprise users. Again, not just engineering users, but enterprise users. And right now, is our understanding, and again, Chris will spend some more time on this, it's a set of applications, and we're very happy to see that these have been designed and expand the access to product data that's scattered across the enterprise systems landscape, providing the stakeholders of product data throughout the extended enterprise access to it, of course, given the right security rights and other things. It is a role-based user interface, again, which makes it more easy to navigate, provides a better user experience than other solutions that we've seen in the past from different PLM solution providers. And the solution itself provides an underlying architecture that connects stakeholders to the data that they need. And ultimately, why? Is because they need to make better decisions based on valid information. So making that connection to the data, no matter where it exists, is quite important. And we're really excited about the solution that the PTC has put together to provide this kind of capabilities to overcome some of the major issues that we've seen in the market. And it's unfortunate right now, but there are a lot of implementations out in the field that have not achieved what they could have achieved. And some years ago, I would talk about PLM and I would say, well, the majority, there's still a lot of implementations that don't get implemented. Now I would say that most implementations, they are successful, and as in they do implement capabilities. But there's still quite a bit, and maybe still a majority, that don't implement as much as they should have, don't provide all the benefits that they could have. So there's many, unfortunately, that are still missing the mark on the benefits and not really enabling an end-to-end environment. And as we talked about, there's many reasons for that, lack of vision, sometimes lack of patience, sometimes lack of money. But if you don't have the vision, it doesn't really matter how much money or patience you have. So it's there's some important components. And quite frankly, there's some that have been frustrated in the past. I mentioned before that there's some companies that are on their second, third, fourth generation, and they may be still frustrated by what they've done before. So again, we have to think differently. We have to look at solutions differently. And quite frankly, the solution providers like PTC are thinking differently on how they even enable those things, which is a very good sign of the maturing of the industry itself. Because many solutions to date really have been implemented in a very limited fashion and not as end-to-end as they need to be. And we need to manage the lifecycle differently, because if we continue to manage it the way we do today, most companies really, again, fall short. So rethinking is very important for industrial companies as well as solution providers that are enabling them. And we see the role-based approach as being very valid because it brings the information in the context that end user needs to have in order to satisfy their responsibilities within the scope of the lifecycle and produce their deliverables. And it should be easy to implement, right? It should be affordable. It should be sustainable and meet those characteristics that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So we do see, kind of in summary, we do see PTC Navigate as being designed to really unlock the value of product data, which currently is scattered through many enterprise IT landscapes. We see the possibility for companies that utilizing a technology like PTC Navigate to unlock the information, to hopefully unleash the product data for the enterprise and make it accessible in a cost-effective manner and beneficial manner to all those that need that access throughout the organization. And PTC in their PTC Navigate, as we look at it, has taken a fresh look at product data and how it can be accessed. And as I said before, many vendors in the past, solution providers looked at it and say, okay, I just want all that data. And we think that has to be rethought, and we think PTC has done a good job to rethink that and how that has to be supported. So I hope that you gain an understanding of kind of why we have to change the way we approach PLM, what some of the characteristics are in a solution that actually enables you to unleash that product information for the enterprise and gives that kind of foundation for further thinking in your own organization of what PLM really needs to be and how you would structure the strategy around PLM, and then what you would look for in PLM solutions to go support that. If you have any additional questions for me, you're welcome to contact me. I know I'll be on for the rest of the webinar, so if there's any questions that I would be happy to answer as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the team to take from here. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone, and now I'm going to change this over to Chris to give his presentation.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Peter. So Peter gave a great introduction of some of the challenges that I know many of you face in making product information available across roles. And so I'm going to speak in some detail about how we're addressing that with some very pragmatic solutions that you can take advantage of immediately. And so this is what we call PTC Navigate. It's a collection of role-based apps that are designed to bring that enterprise information, make it available to all the different product participants across that life cycle, and really give meaning to that life cycle management. So the first thing that we do is connect to your enterprise data. So we're not talking about replicating it. We're not talking about moving that data into a PLM system from where it might reside today. We're not talking about the need to consolidate information that might be spread in a bunch of different areas. We're talking about connecting to it and then making it available in a way that's easily accessible by a particular role, providing just what they need from those various connected systems. And then finally, to make it easy to change. So as the needs of a role change, as you incorporate new enterprise systems, you can easily tailor it to update it, and do that quickly and do it inexpensively, so you can react quickly to the needs of your business. So again, if we talk about connecting to enterprise data, we're talking about all those different sources that you might have today: ERP systems, MES systems, CRM systems, service systems, quality management systems, requirements management systems. So that's the first step. And just imagine if you can, you've got an ability to search across systems, search for information across systems. That's the first step. Making those connections across those different systems to make better decisions, to be more efficient. And then the next step is to, once you have those connections, how do you take that information from all those systems and bring it together in an experience that's intuitive for a role, that is something they can use without training, they can immediately get value from, where it brings together everything they need to make a decision or to do a task in the way that they want to see it together and experience it together. And they have no idea, and they don't care how many systems it might have come from. They want to see these pieces of information together to make a decision or to do a task, and just that information. And then finally, in terms of creating just the right type of experience and connection, we provide some capabilities out of the box that you can take advantage of very easily and quickly without upgrading any of your systems. And then you can extend the apps that we deliver and configure them both with GUIs and where you actually build your own apps from scratch, or that you engage a partner or use partner-created apps, so that you can take something, get value immediately, and keep extending the value through tailoring, through configuration, and by extending to solutions and addressing tasks that you see value in over time. So if you think about some of the enterprise systems that we have today, these are very powerful systems, but just like Peter said, they tend to be focused solely in engineering. And so if you've got somebody on the manufacturing floor or somebody in purchasing who needs product information, it often means that they have to go to a person with the expertise to navigate those systems, who's trained in those systems, and who gets the right information in the right way for that particular user. So you're not only requiring that let's say that person manufacturing or purchasing is now having to seek that information through somebody else, but you're taking the time of that other person. And then worst of all, that they get the information and then they need to get an update. So they're actually using that information sometime later, and the information that was provided to them at the time they requested it is now out of date. So the whole idea here is that we make that information from all those systems available in a way that can be easily consumed, self-served, if you will, by a particular role with just the kind of experience that they can tolerate, that they can use with no training. And a simple example is one of the most common ones that we hear is that a lot of customers still communicate product information via drawings. And so customers tell us, we just want somebody on the manufacturing floor or in purchasing to put in a part number and get the drawing, get the latest release, and it's got to be that simple, where there's no training. There's a lot of turnover sometimes in the manufacturing positions. How can we do this most efficiently? So let me give you I'm just going to run through a little video here that shows you a collection of these apps that we provided that address some of these needs. So if you look at what we're showing here, it's a collection of apps for viewing drawings, for viewing parts, for acquiring design files that are simple to use, that don't require any training. And you can decide how you make these apps available. So you might include, for somebody in manufacturing, a shortcut to just one or two of these apps that might be on a desktop, like View Drawing or View Parts List. And with one click, and you either search on a part number or a keyword to bring up a drawing. Another example might be that you've got somebody who needs to make a process plan and needs the assembly information in detail. How are those parts related? What are the parts? How many of them are there of each type, etc. So that's another typical use case. And Peter mentioned the importance of requirements. So to provide visibility to requirements, all throughout the different stakeholders, whether you've got somebody who's testing something, somebody who's designing something, somebody who's manufacturing something, somebody who's servicing something, they know, what are the performance requirements that should be addressed here, and have easy access to that information. Again, it might be through a part number, an assembly, getting to that detail very easily and very quickly. So if we take an example, go through this view drawing app. So this is showing an example here where somebody can just enter a keyword, a very simple interface, and get to a result set based on that keyword, and then open up that drawing with one click. See a thumbnail to make sure they got the right one, and this can be pre-configured so that it's only showing latest or the latest released, for example. Or if you've got somebody that's working in a prototype shop, you might give them the option for latest. You can control that so that the end user doesn't have to understand how to navigate, versions or know any of the detail about how that information might be organized on the various systems. One click and they get the information that they need to do their task. So let's look at another case here where somebody needs to view structure information. So if you think about the days of drawings where you'd have an exploded view drawing and you would have callouts and you would have to navigate between a callout in the exploded view and a parts list, think of this as a modern dynamic version of that, where you're showing that 3D information representing that assembly. You can either pick in the 3D view or you can pick in the parts list, and it's highlighting in either direction. So you can quickly get at the detail to understand the design, and then in particular, you can see information from other systems, whatever other systems are important for those particular items in that assembly. Maybe you need to know the quantity on hand from your ERP system. Maybe you need to know the quantity in process from an MES system, so that, for example, you can understand, do I have enough on hand and in process to build a certain number of those assembled items? This is all dynamic information you could never have gotten from an exploded view static drawing with callouts in the past. The other thing here we're showing is a way that you can configure these apps through a GUI. So this isn't programming here. This is something that a business administrator can do to address the roles that they're overseeing in a particular organization. So you can control, just exactly what type of data, how they can search on it. You can predefine saved searches that the user has no idea, that might be filtering and focusing the information by lifecycle state. If you've got a set of manufacturing roles that maybe only work with 2 or 3 of 100 products, you can focus their experience so that when they do a search, when they browse, they're only browsing on the products that they're actually assembling or manufacturing at that station. They're getting just the information that's appropriate to them. They don't even know that this is pre-filtered. And this is something that you can do, this configuration. So not only can you control which apps are made available and how they're made available for a particular user, but each app can be configured for a particular role. So this, and this is again something that can be done with a business administrator. It doesn't require a lot of programming. The IT guys would be the ones that would make the connections to the different systems and make the data available, and then the business management roles can decide, okay, for this particular group of users doing this task, we need to get this data from these systems, organize it in this way, filter it this way, and the app then becomes configured for that experience. So this is really all about dramatically expanding the value of PLM information, of product information across those roles in your enterprise. And again, just in summary, this, I want to stress that we're talking about dynamic connections. We're not talking about replicating data. We're talking about bringing together data from all those systems in an experience that's tailored for a particular role, for a particular task, without need to upgrade those back-end systems, without the need to migrate. You simply consume, bring together in a way that you can facilitate those tasks and accelerate decision-making and improve decision-making. One of the other benefits of this type of approach, it's a loosely coupled approach that allows you, where you want to consolidate systems. If you've got, let's say, 2 MES systems, maybe you acquired a company, you can provide an experience where the information is brought together in a way that's transparent to the end users from the various systems, and then as you consolidate those systems over time, the experience of that end user doesn't change. They have no idea what's happening. So it actually provides an abstraction layer that facilitates that kind of consolidation. Or again, if you've got companies that you're acquiring, you can have a common process that's independent of the back-end systems. And so, these type of tools really help you realize the value that Peter was talking about with a real closed-loop lifecycle management, where you're engaging every role in your organization with the information that they need from all the different sources, bringing it together in a way that can facilitate the decision makings where they can self-serve. They don't have to ask somebody, they don't have to wait in line, they don't have to consume the time of others to make information available to them. They get it when they need it. They get it just so that they're getting it at the time they can consume it and ensure that it's accurate. So just to follow up these 3 key different areas that we facilitate: connecting to the systems, across the systems, the data you need, making access to real-time data, bringing it together in the experience that's desired, just what's needed, just in the way it's desired, on the device it's desired to serve that task or role, and then to facilitate change, to support new tasks, to support new connections with new systems, with new companies. And we've showed these to a number of different customers, and so we're sharing here some of the quotes from customers where you can see, the role-based apps extend the user community that has access to valuable information. They'll save us time and money in terms of streamlining the UI for casual users. So we have a lot of companies who say, well, we train users in using these complex systems and in how to navigate that information. It's there, but they have to learn how to do it, and if they don't do it frequently, what they're calling casual users here, they forget how to do it, they're frustrated, or worst of all, they get the wrong information because they forgot how to properly, let's say, filter based on the right version or state. And then finally, by making this information available to casual users, the value is increased of these systems, of all the systems that are being connected to the company. And really, once again, like Peter was saying, deliver on the value of PLM by making that information available properly across all those different roles. Okay, so let's take some time for some questions now.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Peter, for your presentation. Again, if you'd like to ask either Peter or Chris a question, please use the question box located on the left side of your control panel. The first question we have in is, legacy data is always challenging. What's the best way to integrate into the implementation?
So we have a number of connectors that we provide to legacy systems, and we have partners as well in terms of providing those connections, partners both in terms of integration applications as well as integration partners in terms of consulting partners.
Great, thank you. What is the art to include all stakeholders? Is it business system architecture analysis?
I'm going to let Peter answer that one.
Sure. This is the kind of the bigger picture is you have to understand who are the stakeholders, and who in the organization does that can vary quite a bit. I mean, most organizations don't have the role that you mentioned, but you need to have that kind of role. It's usually more of a process architect and a data architect. Sometimes we see that in kind of the office of the CIO. If they have responsibility, which we hope the CIO office does, of the enterprise processes, they would also have then the ownership of the enterprise data model. And that goes a long way of understanding where does the data then sit, who are those stakeholders that have need of this different information to be brought together. And then as Chris was just mentioning, PTC has the technology that can go and get that and bring that together as you need it. But you have to have that ownership at the high enough level in order to identify the processes and the data that cuts across the different systems. Forget about the systems, think more about the data set, and then look at the processes, and then you can look at, okay, where does that information reside, and then produce the right technical solution that can go get that information and bring it together in the right context.
Great. Is there a common maturity model for PLM? Is it something based on the capacity maturity model?
So this is Peter. I'll give you my take on this. So CIMdata actually has we actually have two PLM maturity models. One that deals with the business side of PLM, so it looks at the maturity of the organization's PLM-related technologies, processes, and organization. Is it common? It's CIMdata. It's the only one that we know of that covers all those three aspects. I don't know of anything that is publicly available. We actually have another model that's based upon an enterprise application capability model, which goes into all kinds of PLM capabilities, actually, and other enterprise application capabilities as well. But there's information about those models on our website, but they're not, if you mean common as in openly published, I don't know of any, but I do know that we've used those models that we've created based on the CMMI type model that we've been using for about 15, 20 years now.
Yeah, and just to underscore, I think the first step for anyone is just providing access to that information where, from the source of truth, where it's stored, where it's created. Forget about processes around creating it. Just making that information that was created accessible for the different stakeholders across the organization, again, in a way that they can self-serve. That's a quick win, and this is what we're really addressing with these role-based apps. We're not talking about deep data integration in terms of things like enterprise service buses where you're creating transactions across these systems. We're just talking about dynamically pulling the right data, bringing it together in a context that can support the needs of that role for a particular task.
The next question is, PTC Windchill probably already provides PLM, QLM, SLM, ALM, SEM, and so on. What if an enterprise has non-PTC tools already addressing these areas? How would you position PTC Navigate for such an enterprise?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I want to be absolutely clear that the architecture and approach here is, well, we facilitate connection to our own systems with some of our own connectors, if you will. We've got partners, and the whole approach here, the framework that's based on our ThingWorx technology, is to bring that data from any system together in a way that's very easy to set up and where you're not replicating, you're dynamically acquiring that data and making it available as it changes. Now again, we're talking primarily about cases here to view information. We're not talking about initially about creating, updating information in these other systems.
Thank you, Chris. This is another question for you. Can Navigate run on an iPad or Android tablet?
So it's a browser-based solution today. You can run it in on a mobile device using a mobile browser like Safari or Chrome. There are some limitations with what we support today in terms of 3D visualization, but our intent is to provide native mobile versions of these apps for iOS and Android form factors like phone and tablet in the near future. You can get, a lot of these apps are so simple that customers have said, you know, I don't really need a native app to view that drawing. It's simple enough to be able to enter a part number in a mobile browser and bring up that drawing.
Okay, thank you. Does PTC have a migrate roadmap from Windchill 10 implementation to upgrading to Windchill 11?
Yes, and I think it's important to note here that with these role-based apps, in the case of Windchill or in the case of Integrity for requirements, you know, we support older versions. So back to 10.1 M40. In the case of Windchill, you don't have to migrate your Windchill system to take advantage of the power of these apps.
Thank you. On Peter's PLM development chart, what was the technology capability CIM sees making a significant jump around 2020?
Yeah, I should have failed to mention that. So there's two jumps in the technology vision. The first one, which was earlier, was kind of PDM to PLM. The one that we see in 2020 is this building out of the platform, is that PLM, as it evolves from let's say, an application solution into a platform that will have solutions and applications that are plugged in from other solution vendors as well. So that's the transition from PLM as a standalone solution to PLM as a platform.
Thank you, Peter. And we have time for one more question. Will apps be available that support barcode searching?
Yeah, so great question. We actually have a demonstrator. We don't have a production app to do that, but to support. So we've got customers who use barcodes, QR codes to identify assemblies, to identify parts, and instead of putting in a part number, to be able to use a barcode, a QR code, and you know, on to some of our virtual reality capabilities. There's lots of exciting stuff coming in that area.
Great, thank you, Chris. We do have more questions in, but unfortunately we've run out of time today. We will follow up individually with those who've asked questions that we weren't able to get to. And also, this was the most popular question that we got. A recording of today's presentation will be emailed to all attendees, so you will get a copy of the presentation. On behalf of all of us, we want to thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope that you found it useful, and we hope to see you at future webinars and hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.